Hello everybody and welcome back to the Holle Knits Podcast. Thank you all for such a warm welcome with my first podcast. I'm very excited to be here. Today it is very snowy outside. I went and plowed the snow and I was like, I just want to come back in and be all snuggly and warm and knit. And I thought, ooh, it's snowing, which means the light is very filtered and very nice. So I thought, I think it's an ideal time to record another podcast. So I've got my coffee and the heat is on and I'm nice and snuggly. No worries, I also have water because you gotta stay hydrated. So today I have one finished object and two whips. One whip is attached to an acquisition and attached to an acquisition and a design idea. Woo! And I have some yarn that's been in my stash for a while and I would love your help with what to do with it. And then at the end I think I'll do a little bit of knit and chat because why not? That's so fun. One of my favorite things. So first we have our first and only finished object, a pair of socks, which is the Warm Feet for Everybody socks, knit in the Groovy Ragaln Me Cotton. And they're toe-up socks. They're really stretchy. This is a cotton yarn, and I knit these a little bit longer because these are for someone else, but also I'm having an issue with, on both socks, I did a tubular bind off and they're all kind of ruffly. It doesn't really matter because it's a sock, but like, does anyone else have problems with their tubular bind offs getting really ruffly? These aren't blocked, so maybe it'll block out. And if you want to know more, I think I talked about these in my last podcast. Well, I did. The yarn is super stretchy. It's a cotton yarn. It's mostly cotton with a little bit of polyester, and it's very tightly spun, so it's got lots of stretch. And when you wear the socks, they loosen up, but then when you wash them, they shrink back. So these have yet to be blocked. The person that I knit these socks for couldn't decide if they wanted, blue contrast heel, toe, and cuff or orange contrast heel, toe, and cuff. So I just made a sock for both. And will I be making like a matching pair so then they can have like a matching set of socks? Maybe. I don't know. So I love these. I think out of the two, I think this one might be my favorite. But I really like the way this one looks, but I think this might be my favorite. I just love the speckly colors of this yarn. So as I said, this is the Groovy Ragaln Me Cotton, and these are what they look like in their hank forms because we still have lots because we only knit one sock. Yes. I love this yarn. I love all the colors. I would love some more of this. They have a green color, which as you'll see is like one of my favorite colors. I think there's some green on my wall behind me. I love green, and I saw that there was a green color. I'm like, ooh, I want that. I want the green color. So that is my only finished object for today. I finished these and was like, oh, I can knit a podcast. I can do a podcast now. Yes. So we're moving on to my whips, and this we're gonna talk a little bit about. We have a lot of work on this. This is my Eclair raglan by Laura of Penrose Knits. There's a lot of work that has been done since we last talked. So let me see. This is the front. We've finished the yoke. I don't know if I'd finished last time, we've done the collar, which is the turtleneck collar, and we've knit an entire sleeve. Crazy. A lot of work. And I'm knitting this in Lion Brand Pound of Love in the color Denim, which is really beautiful color. I love this color. This whole, I just added a new skein of yarn like a few days ago. So like the entire yoke, one sleeve, and the neckband is like one skein of yarn, which is crazy. Crazy amount of yarn. So this is a test knit for Laura of Penrose Knits, and I've test knit for Laura before. I test knit the Chunky Souffle, and I was going to test the Chantilly vest, but things just didn't shake out. But this has been knitting up so quickly. It is such a fun pattern to knit. When you knit this, because you will, it'll just fly off your needles. So I had taken a break for like 2 weeks for Christmas on the test knit, and now I'm pretty much done. So yeah. So I mentioned in my last podcast that I had to swatch like 3 times, and this sweater has bobbles on it, and so I wanted to show my swatches because I want to show you all what I was talking about. So the bobbles, so this is my last swatch that I made when I was like, I finally got gauge. This is also Pound of Love in the color Oxford Gray that I knit something else in. And there's like an issue, like see, like the stitch right here is super loose, but like, yeah, I couldn't get, it's like this stitch was loose, and like trying to like tighten it across the bobble doesn't work that well. Yeah, so the original color that I was going to knit the Eclair in was this color. This really electric teal color, because I said the person I'm knitting this for wanted a teal version. So the issue with this swatch is the gauge is wrong, and I messed up the cables like twice. But as you can see, it's super loose and open and like very see-through. So the yarn itself was too thin for the Eclair compared to the Pound of Love by Lion Brand. They're very similar, but yeah, this yarn was way too loose. It was way too thin, and still had that issue with the bobbles. So I omitted the bobbles because I could not get the stitch before the bobble to be tight on the row, before or after, and it was just hard to tighten it. But I think an Eclair sweater in this nice gray would be beautiful, and if you could find another thicker yarn in this color, it would be amazing. So I had such a hard time getting gauge. I had to swatch like 3 times. It was just a mess. But here we are with our nice and beautiful Eclair. Laura does a great job of like teaching you how to do the stitch pattern and the swatch. So your swatch is like your test for doing the stitch pattern for the first time. And I continuously messed up on each of my swatches, and like I learned how to tink back and switch your cables from leaning to the back and leaning to the front when you make a mistake. I figured out like when to know when to do a cable, because after you split for the sleeves, after you join in the round, there's no charts, so you just have to like read your knitting, and the swatch really helped me like know when to do a cable row, when like read the sweater, read the swatch to know when to do a cabled row or when to do a bobbled row. And this is my first, as I mentioned, my first all over cable sweater, and I love it. I'm knitting this for someone else, and I'm knitting the size 7, which is a lot bigger than I would knit for myself, but I think I might borrow the sweater from them because it's so pretty. One last look. I love this sweater, and I love it. I think I knit a sleeve in like 3 days. I thought it would take me like a week, but it didn't. I just love this sweater, and I think you all should knit it when it comes out. So my next project is a design that I'm working on. So it is also an acquisition, so I will show you the yarn. So I had a idea to make a cotton fingering weight sweater that could just be worn all the time, no matter what season. You know, layer it in the fall and winter, wear it as a shirt in the spring, and then like tuck it in your bag for cold or chilly nights in the summer, because the fingering weight sweater is like so light and easy to fold away and pack. So I asked the dyer behind LeRoo Cotton, Kathleen, if she would like to offer yarn support for this idea, and she said yes. So I picked the color Envious, which is in her organic fingering base, which is 100% organic cotton, 444 yards, and it's beautiful. Like, I love this color. As I said, I'm a green girl, and so the idea that I had was something with cables and textured stitches. So that's my first swatch that I made, and I did like a diamond, and then there's some faux cables at the top, and I didn't like the faux cables. I liked this sort of like, I think it's a 12-stitch cable. I loved this, so I decided that I liked that a little bit more. So then I was like, well, what would the cables and the textured stitches look like together? So I made this one, and I didn't necessarily love how they looked together because I wasn't seeing the stitch pattern come up. And then I made this swatch to see if I liked doing the textured stitch diamond as just like making it knits or pearls, and I realized I like both. So I can't wait to show you like what I do with that. So this is what the yarn looks like when it's all caked up, and I'm currently working on the back piece, so it'll be a drop shoulder, and the yarn shrinks a little bit when it's knit, so it's a little bit wider than I would like. Yeah, so the yarn knits up so beautifully, it's so soft, and the reason that I chose cotton is because I love knitting with cotton, and I love knitting fingering weight sweaters, so I thought I want something that will be like super easy to wear but super fun with like texture stitches and cables, but not too much texture and cables, so it can be more like beginner friendly. So in that, I'll show you this yarn one more time, and this yarn is so amazing, and Kathleen is amazing, and I love all of her colors. Like, you should definitely go and check out her website and just like buy some yarn from her. But also in the package was this, which I did not ask for, but was a nice little surprise and a gift. And it says, "Happy birthday." She sent this for me for my birthday. When I saw this color on her Instagram the first time, I was like, ooh, wow, is that on your sock base? And I'm like, ooh, I want that. And I thought I'd buy it for myself for Christmas, but it didn't happen. But then I got this in the mail, and I was like, yay, and I was so excited. I wish that, like, these look really great together, and I'm like, ooh, if I have leftovers, I should do some sort of color work or something. But this is the vegan sock base, which is 55% bamboo, 24% cotton, and 21% elastic, and it's 377 yards. Fingering weight, love it. I wonder if you can see, there's like some yellows and some blues, and the colors aren't like super even, like the Envious, which is like, I don't know anything about dyeing yarn, but the color from like the hank to winding it in a ball to then caking it up, then to like knitting it has been super even. Slightly tonal because it's hand dyed, but here's just a plain swatch. Like the color is pretty even, and I'm like very impressed because I don't know anything about dyeing yarn, but I do know a little bit about tie dyeing, and the even color is just like so beautiful. Yes, so I'm currently working on that sweater. It's gonna take a while because it's a fingering weight sweater, but I'll show you my progress. Here's the back piece. I'm about halfway through the back piece before I pick up stitches along the front and knit the front piece. So it's technically like top down, so like it would go this way. And I'm really enjoying this project. I'm so excited to see, for you all to see what I am thinking about with this project. So just look at this yarn one more time. We've got a lot of stuff here. Okay. So pretty. So pretty. So I was thinking about this yarn, and I will show you my other yarn that I have in my stash. But I bought this yarn for myself I didn't buy it for myself. Someone bought it for me for my birthday this past few weeks ago. And I thought these two looked so pretty together with like the variegated color, and I'm like, I know they probably look cool as socks, but like, can you like think of like a pattern where these two would look super cool together? I was thinking maybe like a shawl, or maybe, I don't know, like a garment. There is like almost 700 meters of yarn here, so it could be something striped. I don't know. Beautiful, beautiful colors. I just love this yarn. So I also got this yarn for my birthday, but in 2021. My video got cut off, but I was talking about this yarn, which is the Blue Sky Fibers Organic Cotton Worsted in the color Dusty Miller. I have 300 yards, 150 yards per 100 grams, and it's this beautiful green speckly yarn, and I have no idea what to do with it. It's been in my stash for a year, and I'm crowdsourcing. Like, do you have any ideas? At first I was like, ooh, a cowl. And this is also the same yarn I used to make my Sophie shawl. So I'm like, ooh, what if I made a small Sophie shawl? Then I was like, ooh, what about a bandana? I need help. What do you do with 300 yards of yarn, or a little under 300 meters of yarn? Let's just look at this. This is Dusty Miller by Blue Sky Fibers. This is cotton. It's so soft and luscious. This was a birthday gift a year ago, and I want to use it. So if you have ideas for what to do with any of these yarns, like, should I use these together or separately, or what if I did all of them together? That would be fun. I don't know, I'd have to hold these double. I don't think that would get us, I don't know. Help. So that is all of the yarny things that I had to talk about. So we are going to move on to the knit and chat portion, and I'm gonna have a sip of coffee. So we're moving on to the knit and chat portion, and I will be working on my new design. So, and I'm on a pro row, so woohoo. So In my last podcast, I mentioned that I am an artist, and that was it. Like, oh, I've been knitting for like 10 years and I'm an artist. Woo, that's it. So today I thought, let's do a little bit of a knit and chat, and just so that we can all get to know each other a little bit and see who is running this channel. So as I mentioned, I'm an artist. I'm an oil painter and a photographer, a film photographer. So that means I shoot 35mm and 120. So if you are very confused by that statement, film. Woohoo. This is Kodak Ultramax. I don't know, it's from like over a year ago now. Almost 2 now. Whoops. Gotta get that developed. So I love film photography, and I love it for the fact that I forgot what I took photos of, and there's no instant gratification with film photography. Just like there is no instant gratification with knitting. It takes a long time. So yeah, I don't consider film photography or photography and or painting as hobbies. I consider them like my jobs, even though I don't make money. But I love painting and photography together because they're so radically different. The painting practice is a lot slower, letting the ideas sort of sit and stew and fester before they become things in the world. But with photography, I'm a documentary photographer, to put a label on it, but I document my life and the world around me. So as I mentioned before, it's a snowy day, so I would probably take my camera and go out into the snow and take some photos. I love just documenting things that I see. So not necessarily like street photography, because I don't really like photos of people, and sometimes I find street photography to be a little invasive, but I do love, you know, looking at street photography and looking at the people and like what kind of work, like what are these people doing. Like the New York street photographers, amazing. You know, the photographers who work in Washington Square Park in New York, the things that they see, so cool. Anyway, so if I remember, I'll put in some photos of my photography work, maybe some painting work. But my favorite film, if you're interested and you're also a film photographer, is Kodak Eclair 100 and Kodak Gold 120. I really like it on 120. I'm not 100% sold with it on 35mm, but Kodak Eclair is beautiful. It works across both 120 and 35, and it's just such a good film. For black and white, I'm basic and I love HP5, and I would probably be out with my black and white film taking photos of the snow because it's so beautiful, and I just keep looking out my window and I feel like I live in Narnia and Mr. Tumnus is gonna come and offer me tea at any moment. Well, I guess in this moment, since I'm inside, I would be Mr. Tumnus. So if you'd like to have some tea, come join me. I'm drinking coffee. I won't lull you to sleep with Narnian lullabies, though. Or send the White Witch after you. I won't do that to you. So, yeah. So back to photography. So So my favorite camera that I like to use is conveniently sitting right next to me because I had to refilm this. But it's my Olympus XA, which is such a small camera. And you open it, it's like a clamshell, I think they're called, and you just wind it and shoot. It's so simple and so seamless, and you just put it on your wrist and you carry it around. So this, if I have film, this goes in my purse or my bag, or even just on my wrist or my pocket. If I had film, I would probably take this on my daily walks because I take a morning walk and I like to take photos on my phone as well. There's so many photos for my walk. But I learned film photography in college, and that was like 4 years ago. Woo. But one of my professors, he had or he had a camera collection that we could just like look at on the shelves. And one night I was waiting for my prints to process. So there's like some steps when you're developing prints. So there's a step at the end where you have to wait 5 minutes for your print to cure in the water. So I'd just like go hang out in the classroom, and he had one of these on the shelves, and I remember like looking at it and was like, this is cool, I want one. And then when I became a photographer, totally forgot about this camera, and then when I became a photographer, people bought this camera and were showing it on Instagram. If you'd like to follow me on my art account, it's at Holle Creates. And I was like, ooh, I like small cameras, I like carrying my camera around, I like documenting my life, and somebody mentioned using this camera as a sketchbook, and I was like, I'm sold, I want this camera. And then I realized when I bought it, I've always been interested in this camera from the first time I laid my eyes on it, and it's a sought after camera. It didn't cost me an arm and a leg. It's not a Context point and shoot, which I have no money for, or even a Leica M6. Anyway, so daily carry camera. But I also have another daily carry that I like, which is the Canon G3 17, or the Canonet. Both are rangefinders, and I found that I really like rangefinders because they just make taking photos faster. I love SLRs. I have a Canon SLR, like everybody, you know, AE1. But this one I really love to shoot any kind of film, but I really like this camera with Kodak Eclair. There's something about those two together that's really nice, and I love black and white with this one. It's just good. So I also mentioned that I shoot 120, and if any of this makes no sense to you, there's so many people on the internet who can help you. This is my Mamiya RB67, which is a big boy. You gotta hear the shutter on this one. Isn't that just... So this is my, like, I still do documentary work on this. I used to take walks, and I just like take this around with me. I love 120 because of the detail you can get and how intentional it feels when you're taking photos. I think this camera probably weighs like 5 pounds or something crazy like that, and I carried this around in a tote bag on a walk because I was like, I want to take photos. And it was one of the best decisions ever made. So hopefully by now there's some of my work on the screen that you can see. But that's my film, cameras, and me talking about film, because I could talk about it all day. If you have any more questions, let me know. So I love photography because it's like almost, for me, it's like the antithesis of painting, which is like, for me, photography is spontaneous, and for painting, it's very methodical and well thought out. So, like I said, if you want to hear more about painting and photography, you can follow me on Holle Creates, and I'll link that in the description below, along with everything else that I talked about today. So, I asked on Instagram what people wanted me to talk about for knitting chats, and I didn't really get much, but somebody mentioned favorite colors, and I was like, that's a pretty obvious one. My favorite color is green, and I love green. And what reminded me to talk about favorite colors is that I really like earth tones, and I was talking about painting, and I love to paint in earth tones as well. It's just like my color palette. I knit with them, I paint with them, I dress in them, I love wearing them. Like, earth tones are my colors. And I used to really be into like yellow ochre, but now I've started to come more into like the foresty, earthy greens, leafy greens, which are just so pretty. I love green. So green is like definitely my favorite color if you're interested. Yay! So I graduated college with a degree in art and art history, so if you have any like art related questions or like color questions, I'd love to answer them. I'm not great with color theory, but I do like talking about color, so you know, we're just gonna go with that. So my painting style is very different than my photography style. As I mentioned, it's very slow, and I sort of not wait for inspiration to strike, because that is a lie. But it's definitely a lot slower, and I feel like there isn't as much to talk about, because photography is just like so, whoa, I want to talk about photography. And in school, everybody wanted me to talk about painting, but I'm like, there isn't much to talk about. Let's talk about photography. And they'd be like, I'm more interested in your like painting stuff and like what's going on with that. But I'm like, did you see this flower that I took a photo of? Yeah. So if you are also like, I'm more interested in painting, I'll talk about it, but know that I'd be more excited to talk about photography. So other things that I enjoy besides like, you know, the work as I call it, is baking. I love to bake. As I mentioned, I was making pizza dough last time. That pizza came out incredible. So with that being said, I do love bread baking, and I just made some chocolate bread that was amazing. It's not super sweet, so it can either go savory or sweet. I decided to make ice cream so then I could eat the bread and the ice cream together and have like a true ice cream sandwich, because I like ice cream sandwiches, but cookies get really hard when you freeze them, and bread is just soft. So it's nice. I'm not a huge cake person, but I do love bread, so I made ice cream and bread. And chocolate bread was amazing. It's not too sweet, because the ice cream that I make ice cream as well, was very sweet. I made a blackberry caramel ice cream. So it was vanilla base with like blackberry caramel swirled in, and the two of those together was amazing. My favorite combination is chocolate and berries along with spice and berries. It's like cinnamon and berries, ginger and berries. I used to make kombucha, and my favorite flavor was raspberry ginger. So I put berries and ginger and cinnamon in like any kind of baked goods that I can get my hands on. So I did make a bread a few weeks ago that was like a cinnamon roll kind of vibe, but I put fresh raspberries, or frozen raspberries. They were fresh, but I froze them myself so I could eat them. And it was delicious. I think it was one of the best. I thought it was the best thing I ever made. And then I made blackberry caramel ice cream. So yeah. I love really interesting flavor combinations, and just like with baking, just like with knitting, I also like to just make things up as I go. So I love to just like learn the basics and then just like try it myself. So that's how I ended up like designing knitwear, because I just there's a lot. Freestyling, as they call it, is a huge part of my process as a knitter and as a person and as a creative in general. So there's just lots of freestyling. So that's where a lot of my ideas come from. I love to bake cookies because cookies are really versatile. They allow for a lot of different flavors. I have not made cookies with berries in them yet, but I have made chocolate cookies, and they were amazing. So yeah, I also really love to cook, but with the mindset of like, I like cooking in the process of cooking. It's a nice way to, with baking, painting, photography, and knitting, they all require a level of creativity. And that's why I like knitting from other people's patterns and test knitting and stuff, because I don't have to think. I don't have to think about it. I just can read the words on the page, and it's nice. So that's what I really like about cooking, is like I can just cook. I don't have to think about it as much as like baking or painting or photographing or knitting. So I cook more out of necessity, but I do enjoy cooking. I watched a lot of, here on YouTube, pasta grannies, and I literally learned how to make pasta just from watching the grannies make pasta, or the nonnas, as we should say. The nonnas are good at what they do. But I think I learned more so by like watching how they made the pasta more so than like the measurements that they use. So like looking at what their dough looks like when they're mixing it and the well that they make, and like how they incorporate the flour and what the dough looks like after it's kneaded. Like I watched so much Pasta Grannies that I just said, yep, I'm gonna make my own pasta, and it came out incredible. Don't ask how much Pasta Grannies I watched, but it came out great. So I love to make bread and pasta and cookies, but I also like to cook vegetables, and I love roasted veggies. I don't eat them as much as I should, but yeah. Other things that I like movies. So I went through this phase, and well, it's not a phase, I still watch French New Wave movies, but in college, the only thing I would watch was like auteur cinema, like French New Wave movies. But I think my favorite director has to be, I love Jacques Rivette, but Jacques Demy is good too. Umbrellas of Cherbourg was literally like one of the best things I've ever watched. I was sitting there watching it like, wow, this is the best thing I've ever seen. I'm so invested in this. So, yeah. So I love movies. I love Rivette and Truffaut and Godard, even though Godard is tricky sometimes. He like kills the main characters of his movies a lot, and I'm like, I don't get that one. But I started watching all these movies because I, of course, like Wes Anderson, and Wes Anderson refers to a lot of these directors in his own movies, so I watch them, and I really like them. I forget the name of the director, but Playtime was a good one. That movie was so fun. I gotta watch it again. It's just, if you've never seen Playtime, I highly recommend it because it's just like anything and everything happens. So I have watched 400 Blows, Breathless, all the classic ones. But I think of like all the classic ones, my favorite is Paris Doesn't Belong to Us by Jacques Rivette, which is so good. I also love Pierre le Fou or Pierre le Fou. Pierre the Fool is a good one, even though, you know, it suffers the Godard syndrome, as I call it. But in terms of like American directors besides Wes Anderson, I really like the Safdie brothers. I think the first time I watched Good Time, I didn't breathe. You know, like, that movie is so action-packed that you're just sitting there watching it, and you're like, at the end, you're like, whoa. And then you're like, wait a minute, that was Robert Pattinson. Robert Pattinson doesn't exist in Good Time. It's just Nick Nikas. Like, it took me to finish the movie and then was like watching him like, oh right, that's Robert Pattinson. He's just so good, and I forgot it was him. Please watch Good Time. But if you're into like super action-packed movies, there's some swearing. It's a lot. I love Uncut. I like Good Time a little bit more than I like Uncut Gems. Uncut Gems, I was just sitting there like, help me. I went to the theater to see it. We've had a pandemic, so that was the last movie I saw in the theater. How auteur and film buffy can you get? The last movie you saw in theaters was Uncut Gems. Anyway, other movies that I enjoy that are Yentl by Barbra Streisand. Just, oh, I love it. I love a good musical. Obviously, one of my favorite movies is Umbrellas of Cherbourg, so I like musicals. I've also, last year, I watched Master and Commander Far Side of the World 5 times, I think, and I'm probably gonna, when I finish this, probably gonna make a bowl of popcorn and watch it again because it's a nice snowy day and I'm like, ooh, I kind of want to watch it. I'll probably wait till it's a little bit darker so I can actually like see the scene at the beginning of the movie. If you've ever seen Master and Commander Far Side of the World, please let me know because I'm obsessed. Other movies that I've watched like a bunch of times is Yentl and La Anne, which I could watch that movie every day of my life. It's like one of my favorite movies ever. And I also really like Ingmar Bergman, and The Seventh Seal is really good. The Virgin Spring was upsetting. I think a lot of his movies are upsetting. But The Seventh Seal was a movie I think about a lot, and I really loved it. Yeah. I like movies. If you like movies and you have recommendations, let me know. Yes, I am excited about the Barbie movie because it's Greta Gerwig. And it's the Barbie movie. Who isn't excited? I don't yeah. So I hope I answered some questions, and I hope we had fun today. So thank you all for watching. I do terribly with like things that are sort of like off the cuff, on the fly. So if we want to keep doing it in chats, please put some questions in the comments below. If you want to know about color, if you're interested in painting, if you're interested in like why I started designing, any question you possibly have that we could talk about in chat, I would love to know, because I do a lot better when I know what I'm talking about. So the podcasty portions are a lot nicer because I know what to say. So thank you all for watching. Don't forget to like this video, subscribe if you want to stay around, and give this a thumbs up. If you're making it to the end, what are some of your favorite movies? Do you like to bake? What are some of your other hobbies? And do you like to gift knit? We're just ended a season of gift knitting and we're moving into more of a selfish knitting season, but I'm still knitting for other people. So do you like gift knitting? And that's all I have for today. So thank you all for watching. I got a few rows done on my sweater. It's just like a panel of a sweater, but remember that it's not about what fiber you knit in or how expensive your projects are. If you bought yarn and needles at Dollar Tree, if they make you happy, there you go. So I want you all to have a wonderful and blessed day, weekend. I'm gonna go enjoy the snow, might make some popcorn, or I might just eat dinner. Who knows? Thank you all for watching. Bye.